All right, hello again, everyone, and thank you all for joining us today. My name is Megan Mendiola, and I'm a Regional Marketing Coordinator here at JMT. We're very excited to have some of our Nexonia friends join us for the webinar today, including Byron Wowchuk and Maria Carosi. Byron is a Partner Channel Manager, and Maria serves as an Account Executive at Nexonia. You'll hear from both of them here in a bit. I just wanted to let you know that this webinar is sponsored by JMT Consulting. We are an ERP and financial management solutions consulting firm. We have over 28 years of experience specializing in nonprofits, and we partner with a wide variety of software partners to find the best solution for your nonprofit. I also just wanted to share a couple of housekeeping notes here before we begin. If you have any questions during the webinar, please go ahead and submit them into the Q&A section on your control panel. We're going to go ahead and save all of those until the end of the presentation, but please don't hesitate to go ahead and submit them as you think of them. Also, just a reminder that we will send you both the recording of today's webinar within 24 hours after its conclusion. So you'll be expect an email you'll be getting one from us that has that webinar recording in there. So to start us off, I'm going to go ahead and play a video that Byron graciously pre-recorded for us on expense management. We're just playing a video here just to help avoid any spotty internet issues that we have as we're all working here from our homes, as many of you guys are as well. But Byron is still on here to help us answer questions. And after the video, I'll hand it over to both him and Maria to introduce themselves as they move on to the demo portion. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started.
My name is Byron Wowchuk. I am a Partner Channel Manager here at Nexonia. I've been with Nexonia for roughly 4 years now. Actually started off in direct sales, and then 3 years ago started working in the Partner Channel, overseeing a variety of VARs. Over the last couple of years, I transitioned to actually managing Inverses, which is Nexonia's overarching company, their key Intact channel. And as of this year, that now includes Sage, as well as Sage Intact, all across North America, and then recently into the UK. Some of the top partners are top Sage Intact partners, as well as part of the Bob Scott's top 100 VAR list. Before I really dive into why T&E matters in this new decade of expense management, I wanted to quickly talk about where Nexonia came from. They started out in 2004, so all the way back when the Apple iStore was first released. We were actually one of the first apps on there. And Nexonia's bread and butter is our expense and time management. Along with that, we also offer automation in travel, project allocation, and integrations to financial management systems such as Intact. We've always been geared towards having a very configurable solution, as well as highly configurable integrations. With Sage Intact, there's actually 300 plus integration settings, so we can get very granular. Along with that, we have credit card integration, payroll, ERP as well, and of course accounting software, and then travel as previously mentioned. In terms of the actual configuration for the product, I have never seen a limit on the amount of configuration that can be done. Even talking about approval processes, I've seen everywhere from a 2-step approval to a 50-step approval process. In order to maintain expense management for a wide variety of clients, we wanted to make sure that we can handle that multi-currency as well as multi-entity. That allows you to pick an expense solution like Nexonia and then grow with us. Along with that, we've always been very geared towards giving the best customer experience possible. When you sign up with Nexonia, you have complimentary training and support for all administrators as well as end users. You get a dedicated customer success manager for the life of your Nexonia account as well. So you always have a point of contact to reach out to. All right, so let's take a quick look at what we're going to cover today. Starting off with why exactly T&E matters, especially moving forward in 2020. We'll then move on to the qualities of best-in-class expense management tools, how to map and understand the needs of every user in your organization, so from end users, employees, to your financial departments. And then finally, powering your organization in 2020 and beyond, looking at specifically at Nexonia's integration with Sage Intacct. So why does T&E actually matter? You've already taken that big leap of automating your financials with Sage Intacct. But here's the thing. You've expedited that process, but then all of a sudden you turn to your right and you see that stack of receipts or the stack of papers that have come in, and now you're manually having to put into an Excel spreadsheet or, uncrimple the receipts to see the totals and entering all of that data manually. Really, that shouldn't be the case. Especially in this stage and age, all of that can be automated. T&E spending is actually in the trillions and billions of dollars. So why wouldn't this be automated? And it's a business process that honestly, up until, pretty recently has been overlooked. And a lot of that reason is because the hidden costs don't really get associated with expense management. So if we look at this slide here, there's $1.4 trillion that was spent on business travel globally in 2018, and $304 billion in the United States alone in 2018. So even though, we're now in the digital age, there is still quite a bit of spend on T&E and with travel and getting face-to-face, with your clients, with your partners, etc. When we take a deeper look at T&E spend globally, what does this actually mean to your bottom line? So this slide here is actually a 18-year study, or rather an analysis. It was across 14 different industries, and it was conducted by the Oxford Economics and U.S. Travel Association. Now, through this, what they've found out is for every dollar invested in business travel, U.S. companies generated $950 in revenue and $290 in profit. So if you look here, the trip types, they were actually broken down by customer meetings, conferences, trade shows, incentives, and then all other. The percentage of travel budget allocated to customer meetings was 34%, being the highest. So what does that mean? Yes, we're in a digital age, but people still like to be face-to-face. They still like to shake a hand. Not everybody likes to constantly email or telephone. And the return on $1 of investment for these customer meetings were between $15 and $20,000. So massive range in there. Now, with those kind of numbers and the profits that can actually be made from travel spend and expense management, why wouldn't companies be taking a deeper look? And this is really the thought for 2020. Now, what this is here, this slide, is T&E spend benchmarks. So what having an automated solution actually allows you to do is take a deeper look into, what your own company is spending, but also what is your industry spend? What's the average spend on, let's say, hotels or, office expenses or gas? Knowing these benchmarks can help predict spend. It can also influence special business rates at hotels, right? If you want to do group buying, it also allows you to gear your company policies and to really watch your costs and make sure you're not spending more than you have to. This slide here of popular and most loved brands, this was actually pulled from a Nexonia report, and each year we come out with a Spend Smart report. Now, again, going into visibility that an expense management solution offers you, you can pull this sort of information. Now, this is just a fun slide. You can see number one was Uber, which was the highest rated brand and most popular vendor by share for expense receipts. Starbucks, of course, chances are they're stopping at Starbucks and hopping in their Uber. But really what I want to talk about here is the visibility that you do get from an expense report. Unlike when you go into Excel spreadsheets or you have that side piece of paper at your desk, in order to find what you want and really dig into your spend financials, it's going to take a lot of time, and hopefully all that information has been recorded correctly. Okay, so when we wrap everything up, as we've seen, there are billions of dollars spent by companies in travel and expense management, you can get some spend benchmarks from industry averages, right, from an automated solution, and that's all great, but why does this actually matter? Why does visibility matter? Why do you want that within the company? So this next section, we're going to actually look at T&E processes and spending and help you to control your spend. All right, so the first step is how do we actually leverage these benchmarks that we find out now that we've taken that leap to automate our expense management? Well, the big picture is that if you understand the industry benchmarks and you have visibility into this, you can ensure that your own company's overall spend is not way out of whack, way out of control. So let's say average room of a hotel is $246 across the industry. Well, if you take a look and realize, you know what, our team is spending an average of $350. That's $100 right there that you could cut back on each time an employee stays in a hotel room. So now that we know the benchmarks and we've started to maybe change the way we look at spend, what do we do with these benchmarks, that goes above and beyond that? So it allows you to focus on what matters. Maybe group buying for a hotel would make sense over, company policy at Lyft or Uber. You can continually verify what matters and adjust your own company policies accordingly. Right, so when I mean company policies, I talk about maybe spend limits, maybe certain dates you don't want to have your employees stay at a hotel because price increase. You can also compare apples to apples. Right, so as we saw there, if you have an expense tool, you can dig into the different brands. Right, so you can compare, let's take that number one Uber as the most popular brand. You can compare what your company spends on Uber compared to what the benchmark is for Uber. You can compare data over time to see if your spend has gone up or down. Compare data across your different industries. You can see the magnitude of trends, the direction of trends, and also what is driving those trends. So as I mentioned earlier, something that Nexonia does is that Spend Smart report. Now, for a best-in-class expense management company, they should have some sort of report to help with your visibility. For example, it's like a 2019 travel and expense management trends report. That's an example of what something could look like. And really when you're shopping around and when you're looking for expense solutions, find out if they offer you that. In the long run, it'll help. So these are some shared views that we've found. Many organizations don't actually understand the challenges they face in effective T&E management. That kind of goes back to it actually being overlooked. Technology and maturity is an inherent barrier to effective T&E management at many organizations. Now, fortunately for all of you, you've kind of taken that first step in implementing, Sage Intacct. You realize we can't do our financials manually anymore. These stacks of papers and adding up Excels and anywhere good. So we're kind of past number two. Looking at number three is technology is key to addressing areas in T&E management that need improvement. Right? So again, going back to, we're in 2020, so your technology should match. And quite honestly, the way companies are progressing, if you're not keeping up to date, with what's new, what can streamline your business processes, your competitors could have an advantage. Number four is companies view the value offered by expense management systems through the lens of ease of use, driven by mobile functionality. Now, everyone has a cell phone. Everyone's on their cell phone constantly. My girlfriend doesn't always like it, but it is what it is. So the thing is, that needs to be factored in when you're looking at an expense solution, right? The end user has to be able to quickly go in, code their receipts, or take a picture of the receipt, and be able to build out their expense report and expense items on the go. And number five is companies that invest in dedicated expense management systems are seeing a positive ROI for that investment. And we'll get into that in just a little bit. All right, and by a little bit, I meant this very next slide of the cost to process a single expense report. Now, when we look at this, you could take a step back and say, well, you know, 2663 of a manual process, where does that number come from? The second part of that is semi-automated, right? So that's kind of a mixture of maybe there's a receipt capture tool, but you don't have that tool to build out your expense report and automate your approval process. Then for a fully automated report, the average is $685. The graph there just shows expense report processing costs and the percentages. So what often gets ignored, and this is where we see, you know, that positive ROI start to kick in, is the hidden costs that are associated with an expense report, right? So a lot of those costs are hours to actually create the report, to review, and then approve. And it's actually been documented too that on average, there's 20 to 22% of an error rate in a manual process. There's also hard costs that get associated with having a manual process, such as, you know, the paper use, the filing, right, manual filing, the time for reconciliation and reimbursement. So in terms of reconciliation, one expense management solution will allow you to do is bring in your credit card transactions. Once that transaction gets picked for an expense item, the solution should automatically reconcile that credit card item. The reimbursements actually can be done through an expense solution as well. And overall lost productivity. We recently had our SKO, and there was a stat that came up that said 30% of employees at companies were actually doing non-work related work. So we briefly covered, you know, why visibility actually matters into your expenses and your travel. So now let's take a quick glance at the art of controlling your T&E spend. A huge benefit of automating your expense management is that it acts as a foundation of control for your company and your overall spend in expenses and travel as well. So from there, you can start to build out certain travel policies once you have all the data. Like, that's great, but what should an effective corporate travel policy actually include? Well, it has to be clear and simple to follow for all employees. It's up to date with rules, partners, and discounts. So again, that kind of goes back to being able to use those benchmarks and actually being able to do a group buy or a company buy for, let's say, a hotel. It manages the average traveler within the organization, allows for reasonable accommodations. So that being said, if you have a salesperson in there, you know, out in the field, maybe you'll allow them that 4-star hotel instead of giving them that 2-star. Contains clear explanations for limits and restrictions. A good expense tool will be extremely easy for the end user to view this information. A lot of times they could hover over and see the actual policies that are associated with, let's say, meals. It considers travel vendors with discounts and preferred pricing. So that can go, again, to airlines. It can go to, let's say, taxi companies, hotels. It also enforces legal compliance with IRS standards and other regulations. I cannot stress that point enough. Ensure that the expense solution has that built in. A great way to actually assess your T&E policy is, yes, we have the benchmarks, but, you know, talk to the end users. Ask them what's important to them. So these are just some questions that you can actually ask. And quite honestly, the financial department will then seem very much approachable. And employees like to be able to give their input. So how is travel currently booked? Air, hotel, car rental? Find out, are they using, let's say, Expedia, or are they going direct? What does the process look like for employee reimbursement? Are they using, or are you using a third-party solution? Is it more kind of ad hoc, we just send a check? Who is responsible for booking travel? Are they doing their own bookings, or do you have maybe a travel management that does your bookings? Or do you have HR doing bookings? On average, how many days in advance is travel booked? What that does there is it allows you to put in the correct policies in place, saying, there could be a hard stop if an employee has to travel within 3 days or a week, since prices usually do go up when it's kind of a late booking. What is the average cost of booked travel? Include hotel, airfare, car rentals, ride shares, so Lyft, Uber, and also meals. Again, that'll help ensure those company policies that maybe the $500 meal is a red flag. Who's overseeing and approving book travel? Is it a direct report? Does it go to an employee manager and then there's a step above, right? So that approval routing should be figured out. And then on average, how many employees are being booked for each trip? That will really give you a sense of how many users you need on an expense management solution, because you want to make sure, obviously, you're not paying for a whole bunch of users that don't really need the solution. Okay, so through talking to your employees, by looking at benchmarks, you've come up with your corporate policies. Amazing. But now, how do you actually drive those policy compliances? Well, the great thing about an expense tool is you don't have to get up from your desk and run over and nag somebody for their expense reports or saying that they're out of policy, right? Or worst case scenario, the spend is already gone, it's out the window, and then you find out that they're out of policy. So the best way to do this is to leverage the technology to enforce compliance. Use your expense tool. A lot of them you'll be able to put in, whether it's a soft block, so maybe they just get a warning, or it could be a total stop completely and they cannot book that travel. Educate your business travelers and all managers who approve T&E expenses. Review your T&E policy with all employees at least annually, right? So that can come from HR or can come from finance, really whoever owns the policy. Deliver easy access to T&E policies, but then along with that, also deliver easy access to T&E policy FAQs. As I mentioned before, a best-in-class expense solution should be extremely easy for the end user to find the information that they need, right? So whether it's built in a separate document to the expense tool, or if they can hover over a field and it shows the expense policies, it should be very easy and very straightforward for the end user. And finally, develop a culture of accountability. Now that you've invested in really streamlining this process, you're streamlining your business operations around company policies, that will put it on the end user to ensure they're doing company policies and really take the burden off of the shoulders of the financial department. Throughout the webinar today, I have hit on some of these points of what actually the qualities of a best-in-class expense management tool are, but now let's take a deeper dive into it. The reality is there's a lot of options out there now. Well, but a good number of options for your expense and travel management solutions, as well as timesheets, honestly. But what are those must-have expense reporting features? The very first one is simplicity and ease of use. Now, this needs to be looked at by not only the administrators of the account, so whether that's financial departments, if it's HR, or if it's managers, whoever you have set up as an administrator, but also for your end user. It's people who are having to take a picture of the receipt, code out the expense reports, and then submit it. Number two is looking at automated features. Now, when we talk about automated features, a big one that should be part of a solution is OCR technology. That's optical character recognition technology. And what this will actually do is, again, it streamlines it for your end users. They take a picture of the receipt and it will automatically pull the information into an expense item for them. Number 3 is accessible anywhere. Now, what I mean by that is offline capability. A lot of times if they're flying, that's perfect time for an employee to start building out their expense report, right? Start coding out those the receipts. That way, when they're back online, they can concentrate on doing their other work that they're really being paid for. Number 4 is looking at integration services. Now, I did highlight that because, again, you've already taken that leap to streamline your business processes with Sage Intacct. So to have a solution that is integrated into that you don't need to worry about should really be top of your mind. Now, I'll dive into it a little bit later in the webinar, but a big one to look out for is an API integration. And now finally, reporting analytics. That goes back to benchmarks, being able to see what your company is actually spending on hotels, airfares, cabs, meals, being able to pull reports on that, whether it's monthly, quarterly, or on a yearly basis. The previous slide hit on overarching themes of what a best-in-class expense management solution tool should have. But now let's look at some of the qualities. So as I mentioned, accessible anywhere from any device regarding offline capabilities. Improves expense report submission. Now, one of the great tools about expense management is you no longer have to send those emails out saying, hey, you're overdue on submitting an expense report. You don't have to run over to everybody's desk trying to get them to submit because it's month end. We can actually automate that process by having a best-in-class expense tool. We can send out, we call it negging email, negging reminders, but really any expense tool will have different names for it, but essentially it's sending a quick email over to the end user, just reminding them that they might have outstanding credit card transaction items that need to be put into an expense report. It eliminates paperwork, reduces errors, and improves productivity. Streamlines approval workflows and reviews. When you go through an implementation for expense management tool, part of that implementation is going to be how you want the approvals routed. Now, what's nice about the current day expense tools is that it's all automated. So as soon as an expense report gets submitted, it will be routed however it's set up. Educates on spend culture with granular policy controls. Automates everything from credit card feeds to receipt capture. Provides deep insight and reporting into company spend. Secures data to the highest privacy and security standards, and scales as the organization grows. That last point is very important. You don't want to have to keep finding a new solution every time your company scales. So try to find an expense tool that can grow with you. Right? You don't really want an out-of-the-box solution. You want somebody that will be able to configure the back end as you grow the company, as your policies change, as you add more users or more employees onto the account. Now we've covered what the qualities of a best expense management tool should be. What do those top features actually allocate to ROI, right? So we took it from 2018. Again, this was from the Expense Management Trends Report that Nexonia puts out. But again, any proper expense tool of being a best-in-class will be able to help give visibility into this. So when we look here, how ROI was generated. Improved efficiency and expense reporting processes was 58%. The reduction in processing costs, paper, postage, or 53%. Those were the two biggest ones. And then from there, it kind of drops down. The mobile accessibility, for instance, was 30%. And honestly, that's because it gets harder to calculate the hard ROI on just being able to, hop onto an application. We've now covered the qualities of the best-in-class expense management tool, what you should be looking in your selection process. Now let's go back to mapping and understanding the needs of every user in your organization. The mapping of the needs of every user in your organization can really be separated into 3 segments: what matters to users, what matters to approvers, and then finally what matters to finance. Now, bringing together these cross-section of users is invaluable and will give you great insights into what your team needs in an expense management solution. What this also does too is it can uncover potential shortcomings of a solution. It can streamline stakeholder buy-in as well. So let's look at what matters to users. Ease of use, anytime, anywhere, paperless receipt, fast reimbursements. Right, I know for myself, when I use an expense tool, that's what I want. I want it clear, concise, able to do my expenses on the go, quickly code everything as need be, and not worry about it. Now, what matters to approvers? This could also what matters to managers. Automatic policy compliance, rules, compliance controls. Really, an approver doesn't want to have to be chasing people down. This is one of the great benefits of automating expenses. Flexible approval workflows. Now, when you look at flexible approval workflows, an expense tool can provide different kinds of policy blockers, whether they're soft, so the end user or the submitter would just get a warning, or a hard block, which would not allow the expense to go through at all. In-app communication with the submitter, high employee adoption rates, and a self-service help center. And then finally, what matters to finance? Increased policy compliance, greater insight into employee spending, scalable integrations that adapt with the organization, and then reliable solution with minimal downtime. You don't want to buy into a new expense platform. Everyone's getting excited about it. That month end comes and it's down. That will ruin your day. So ensure there's some sort of reporting on the actual uptake that the solution is for, or rather ask them about their downtime.
All right, great. So I will get out of my screen here, and thank you so much, Byron, for that wonderful presentation that you recorded for us there. So I will get out of this here, and then I will turn it over to Maria if she wants to go ahead and take it away for the demo portion.
Awesome. Thank you, Melissa. Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's meeting. My name is Maria Carosi, and I'm one of the account executives here at Nexonia. What we're going to be doing today is we're going to focus on the Nexonia expense application. We're going to start off with the mobile app and then followed by the web application afterwards. At the end of the call, we're also going to take a look at the Intact integration as well. So I'm going to start sharing my screen here, and then we're going to kick things off from there. All right, so what you're seeing in the middle of my screen here is the Nexonia mobile device, and in the background is the web app. A few things to note before we actually go in and build out a report. You are going to see the Nexonia logo and coloring throughout both applications. That section there is customizable, so we're going to have your organization's logos and colors here instead. Also in the middle of the screen where you're seeing this transaction icon with number 15, this here is where your credit card integration will be stored. So we actually work directly with your bank to get this feed established, and these transactions will automatically appear in Nexonia as soon as they move from a pending state on that credit card feed. Back on the screen here, we're now going to see that report or that credit card transaction come through later on as we build out a report. And how this whole process begins here is your employees would select on the report icon on the top right of the screen. From there, they're going to see this summary view, and this is where they can go in and add the report title. For the mobile app, it's always going to default to today's date, but the employees can override it by just clicking into that line item and then entering in whatever title they'd like here, the March expenses in this case. Once they hit save, they're going to see that expense report open up, and this is where they can start adding all the transaction detail into. At the bottom of the screen here, where you see add item, this is how this process begins. So your employees would select that option, and they're going to see these two new fields generate. So the first, where it says create a new item, this is going to capture reimbursable expenses, whereas the add from credit card below is going to reference that credit card feed we saw earlier. At the top here, where it says demo credit card, If you have more than one corporate card program in circulation, or if the employee wants to integrate their own personal cards as well, this is where they can toggle between them. And once selected, they're going to see all the applicable transactions generate below. When they find the transaction that they want to pull through, they can easily just click straight into it. And from there, they're going to see the individual transaction view screen. And this is where the coding will take place. With the credit card integration, you are going to see various fields on this screen auto-generate from that previous view. So you'll see things like the amount, the currency, the transaction date, and then the credit card the purchase was made on, all auto-populate here. And at the top of the screen, this is where your employees can take a picture or attach a receipt. Now there's a few options with the mobile app. The first, which is going to most likely be the most common option you'll see, is if your employees have gone in earlier and they've taken a picture of the receipt and they're waiting for the transaction to come through. They're going to see a little flag icon above the amount section that's going to tell them that there is a receipt in the system that matches this transaction. Now, the way the system knows this is because we do have an OCR capability that picks up the date, the amount, and the vendor field on those receipts. And from there, that's how the system will try to match the two together. The other two options are at the top right of the screen. The first is the little image with mountains, and that there will allow your employees to pull any of the images from their camera feed into the app. Whereas the camera icon next to it will activate the camera on your phone, and they'll be able to take a picture of the receipt using the app. Once selected, you'll now see that image at the top taking over that placeholder. And further down here, this is where your employees can add the coding that you need. With the Intact integration, these fields are all going to be coming in from your Intact environment. And so that would include things like your customer, your project field, your category, your jail accounts, and then as well as any of the dimensions that you're tracking on that end. So class, department, location in this case. The way it works here is your employees would just go in and make the appropriate selection, followed by the expense category. And this here is just a default list, so we can customize this based on the GLs that you're tracking or the categories that you're tracking. We also have the ability to enable a billable flag. So if you are tracking billable expenses back to your customers or projects, we can enable that so they can toggle that on or off. And then followed down below by the actual dimensions themselves. So you'll see things like the class field, which is a selectable field where it says choose one. Or you could also see it configured similar to department and location field, where we can set these values on the user's profile so they will show up as defaults anytime they start an expense. The final section here is the memo field. And here you'll see various details from the credit card stored in this view. And it also gives the employee the opportunity to add any additional notes that you'd like them to submit. Once completed here, the employee can hit save at the top of the screen. And you're now going to see that transaction added to the report. And you'll also see a little credit card icon under the amount showing that it's been made on one of the integrated cards. The other option here in this report, if you wanted to add additional items, you would just go to add item at the bottom of the screen. And from here, you can add both out-of-pocket or non-reimbursable transactions. And just to show you the out-of-pocket side, very similar format, just a few more fields to track. And in this view as well, we can also track things like mileage. Now going back to the main screen here, what I'm going to do now is flip over to the web app so we can continue working on this expense. And one thing to note, I know Byron mentioned this earlier, but we do have, or the mobile app is also fully offline capable. So what that means is if your employees are traveling, if they're on an airplane, whatever the scenario is, and they're not connected to Wi-Fi or data, they can still go into the system just as we did moments ago, and they can code out their expenses. And from there, once they do reconnect, everything's just going to sync over between the two systems. Now on the web application, so this is what they'll see when they log in. I have other modules activated as well, since Nexonia does have a range of different platforms or different applications. But for today's call, we're going to focus on the expense tool down here. So you can click into this portal or this portal to get into it. And selected there, you're going to see that expense report that we were just working on moments ago. And the way it's going to work for your employees is as they continue to add expense reports, you're going to see them listed down here with the oldest at the bottom and the newest at top. Also for the admins, the way it works for them, they do have this drop-down menu at their disposal. So here they can drill down into different employees' expense reports, or they could pull all users. And this also works for anybody that's part of the approval process. They'll be able to see their subordinates. As the user themselves, the way it works for them, they can either start a new report by clicking this green button up top, or they can click straight into the report that they're working on to continue adding more details. Once selected, they'll see all of those or all the information that we coded moments ago. And at the top left here, you're going to see the two options similar to the mobile app. The first being the reimbursable side and the second being the credit card piece. So we'll focus again here first. Once selected from there, they're going to see that credit card feed open up again. And the only additional functionality that the web app has in comparison to the mobile app is that in this view here, the employees have the ability to bulk import transactions. So say if these are all part of a specific maybe statement date or trade show, the employee can auto-select by clicking this button up top. And they can also start categorizing everything in this one view. And that also goes for any of the other fields that you're tracking on the Intact side or whatever accounting system you're using. And from there, all of the coding can take place in this one screen so that the employees don't have to go into each line item individually. If you're looking to just pull one in, really straightforward, you would just code it out here and hit create. And from there, you'll see the individual transaction view screen open up again. And then you'll also see various details come out in over from the credit card. So everything's already auto-populated here. And then you'll see all the selectable fields coming in from your accounting system. On the right-hand side, this is where you'd attach your receipts. And there's 3 options for the web app as well. The first is this middle console here. If your employees have taken a picture of their receipt earlier on, and again, they're waiting for the transaction to come through, this is where they can drag and drop into this receipt area. The next 2 options are at the top here, and under add receipts, you're going to see upload and email. And this email function is actually pretty interesting how it works. If your employees receive any emailed receipts, so usually hotels will do this when they're trying to check out, the employee can actually just straight forward those emails into receipts at Nexonia.com. And from there, it's going to attach those receipts to that user's profile so that they can reference them later on when they're building the report. Now, in the event that the employee has an existing report, all they have to do in that case is enter the 4 or 5-digit report code into the subject line of that email. And from there, the system will attach that receipt to that pre-existing report, so it'll keep things nice and organized for them. The other option here is a standard upload, which I'm sure everyone's very familiar with. So I'm just going to go into my receipt folder here. And once attached, you'll see a little preview of the image. So once you hit save and close at the bottom here, it actually removes that transaction from this credit card list so that the employees will know exactly which transactions are still outstanding. And back here on the report, you'll now see that item added to this report level view. For the next example now, we're going to go into an out-of-pocket expense again, so reimbursable. But in this case here, I want to show you some of the policy enforcements that we can set up on the expense category level. So in this example, we're going to leave the category as car rental. And in the total, I'm going to include $70. Let's try that again. There we go. And then on the right-hand side, I'm not going to attach a receipt, and then I'm going to hit save and close. From there, you'll now see these new transactions that have populated here. The first we call a policy blocker, and the second we call a policy warning. And basically the difference between the two is that a policy blocker is going to prevent the employee from submitting that expense until the policy has been fulfilled. So this is a hard stop. Whereas the policy warning, on the other hand, is going to allow them to send it through, but it's going to raise this flag here for both the approver and the employee, letting them know that a policy has been triggered. And then from there, the approver can make that final call if they're going to send it through. So this would be more of a soft policy block. For the employee themselves, if they want to see what happened here, they can click into either icon. So this one here is saying a receipt wasn't attached. Whereas the policy warning, on the other hand, is saying that the amount that we included, which is $70, is above the day limit we have for car rental, which is set at $50 a day. Since for this example here, I don't have a receipt attachment, I'm going to remove it. So very straightforward, action, and then delete. And everything else I'm going to send off to the approval process by hitting the green submit button up top. Once submitted there, the employees are going to see these blue arrows that have now populated showing that it's been sent off. And they're also going to see the approver's name in this section here. So if you have a multi-step approval workflow in place, this name will continue to change as these transactions move along that workflow, so that the employee and then the admins or whoever else needs visibility into that will be able to see with whom these transactions are sitting with. From this view here, the way it works on the approver's side, they will get notified via phone or email, so they can complete the approval process on either device, so regardless where they are. And if they use that email link that they received, it's going to open up this tab up here. So this is the approval module. And from there, it'll open up the expense tool if we're referencing expenses. and they'll sign in as themselves, of course, and they'll see that report sitting in their queue here. So all they have to do here is just double click straight into it, and they'll see the exact same view we saw as the employee earlier. To make things nice and easy for the approver, all they have to do from here is hit show receipts at the top. And at the bottom, they'll see exactly which images we included. So they can toggle between them on the left here, and they'll also see this little number change, so they know exactly which line item it belongs to up above. Now, in the event that the approver needed to dive into any of the transactions, so say if they noticed there was a coding error, we can give them edit rights. So in that case there, they can dive into it, and then they can make the adjustment as needed here without having to send it back and forth between them and the employee. Then in the event that something did need to be sent back, they can just click into whichever one they're looking to reject and hit the reject button up top. And from there, they'll see this rejection comment window open up so they can let the employee know exactly what happened. Then on the other hand, if everything looks good, they can just select all and then hit approve. From there, that report will move from that manager's queue. So it'll either go to the next step of the approval process, or it's going to go back to the employee as a fully approved expense report. And they're going to see this green arrow here, and they'll also be notified via phone or email. Now the last piece to show, so that's the whole workflow on the expense side and the approval process. Last piece to show directly in Nexonia is our reporting tool before we flip over into Intact. And with this tool here, this allows you to run analysis on any of the data that's in the system. With your subscription, you get access to these default reports that you're seeing on my screen, but you can also create customized reports, or our team can create them for you. So if you needed maybe a credit card reconciliation report or a report to track spend per department, this is where you'd be able to extract that detail from. Now flipping over into Intact, just to touch on the integration here. So Nexonia does have the strongest integration with Intact in the industry. The way it works with Intact is a fully automated sync via the API, and it is either triggered every day or every hour. So it's up to you on how frequently you'd like that to run. And the way it works is that we pick up fully approved expense data pick up only your expense data in Intact and bring it into Nexonia, and then only export fully approved expense data from Nexonia into Intact. Now, the way it works on the Intact side, when we export this data, we can send it to different modules in Intact. So if you're using the time and expense module, we can send it over as an expense report. If you're not and you're using AP instead, we can have it send over and it'll generate a bill payable back to either the employee if it's reimbursable or to the credit card vendor if it's non-reimbursable. And then we also have the option to send this over to cash management as well as straight to the journal. So those are the various options there, and you can decide based on what works best for you. For our call today, I'm going to show you what an expense report would look like and also what a bill would look like, so you have a general understanding of how this populates over. So we'll start off with the expense report first here. Okay, so just to go over this very high level, we send things over like the date information here. So typically it would be the export date or the report creation date, newest item, oldest item, whatever you prefer. We also send over the employee information. So this is how we form users on the Nexonia side, is we actually pull it from the employee field in Intact. Down here, we'll send over things like NEX and then the unique identifier. So it shows you it came out of Nexonia. And then we'll also send things like the expense report title in the upper level view here. Down below, here's the transaction details. So we'll send over transaction dates, the expense types, which would be your expense categories, the amounts, and then of course, any of the dimensions that you're tracking on that side. And then we also send over this billable flag here if you're tracking this. Now, what's nice about the Nexonia integration as well is we also automatically export the receipt attachments into Intact. So that'll go over at the same time that the expense data sync is run. And from there, everything is stored in your Intact environment. So it's going to make it your one true source of record. The attachments will be stored in this section here. So just to go over what this looks like. So this here would be the sample that comes out of Nexonia. Up top, you're going to have a summarized view of the report. Further down here, you're going to have the total spend per category. So the system will categorize this for you. So if you've spent $10 on Friday and $10 on Thursday, it'll show you a total spend of $20 for whatever category selected. Then further down here is where you actually have the receipt attachment. So you'll see them listed multiple per page, and you also have So if you needed to look at this for audit purposes or anything like that, you have the ability to use this tool without having to toggle between two systems. Now on the AP side, just to quickly touch on that, we're going to take a look at a bill. Okay, so I'm just going to find a good one here. Perfect. So on the bill side, very similar type of information. So the date, the employee information or the vendor information in this case, the export details, the expense report title. We also send over the currency conversions if needed. And then down here, you'll see the actual line item detail all broken up again. In this case, instead of expense types, we reference your GL accounts, but the same information will come across. And then again, you have the attachments in this section here, and you'll see the same format we saw earlier. All right, so that's everything on my side here. I'm going to actually pass it back to Melissa now.
Thank you so much, Maria, and thank you, Byron, as well for your presentation on expense management. So now we're going to move to Q&A time. So it looks like we don't have any questions yet at the moment, but just a reminder that if you do have any questions right now, you can submit those into the Q&A portion of your control panel, and we will get those answered for you. In the meantime, while we're waiting, Byron, did you have anything that you wanted to add on Nexonia or expense management at all? I know you haven't gotten the chance to present live yet, so I wanted to give you a chance to say anything that you wanted to say as well.
Hey, Melissa, thanks. No, I just want to thank, honestly, Maria for taking the time out and being able to demo that today. I will say that if there is any interest in finding out more about how we can help out, definitely reach out to your JMT contact, and then from there we can all kind of hop on a call together. That'd be the best way to go about it. And I know we focused on Intact today, but as Maria mentioned, that's just because we do have best-in-class integration. We do work with other accounting systems as well via a CSV upload of approved expense reports. And then after this, as I mentioned, reach out to your JMT contact. Maria Carosi will actually be working with you to show kind of how we can help your organization from a personal standpoint moving forward if there is interest in reviewing Nexonia.
Great, thank you so much, Byron. And we actually did have a question come in just now, so if either of you can touch on that, I'll read that out. Someone asks, at what point can finance correct account coding?
Yeah, so great question there. So throughout any point of the approval process, so as long as that finance individual has admin rights on the Nexonia side, they can correct it at any point. Once it's been exported into your accounting system, you should be able to edit it as well there. But we try to have all of that taken care of before it gets exported, but the edits can take place in either system.
Great, thank you so much, Maria. That looks like all the questions that we have today. And just a reminder, if anyone has any questions afterward, like I said, your JMT contact will be reaching out to you to just follow up and learn more. So if you do have a question between now and then, you'll definitely have the chance to ask it there. And we will throw that back to Byron and Maria if you do have any questions. We will make sure we get those answered for you. So I just want to thank Byron and Maria again for that awesome presentation and showing us some of the great features of Nexonia there. And so because it looks like that's all the questions that we have, we'll go ahead and bring this webinar to a conclusion here. We are getting close to the top of the hour. We want to be respectful of everybody's time here. So we do hope that everyone enjoyed the presentation here today and that you will join us for future events and webinars as well. You can find out about those by visiting our website at jmtconsulting.com and clicking on the events tab. And with that, we will go ahead and conclude today's webinar. We do hope that everyone is staying safe and healthy and enjoying this time at home as much as you can be, and that we do hope that everyone has a great rest of the day. So thank you guys, and goodbye.